Welcome back, COSA 1 folks. Professor Almeida here, and in this video I want to walk you through Excel Skill Review 1.1. In this chapter, you're going to be learning how to get started using spreadsheets with Microsoft Excel. Coming up, you'll see this project from start to finish, and for the first 5 steps, as you're going to see, they're pretty much going to give you a tour of Excel along with some of the terminology. So if you just want to get a head start on the project and you know what you're doing, go ahead and skip to step 5 in this video. Otherwise, continue watching, and if you need a break, you always have the pause button. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully by now you know how all of this works. Let's go ahead and download the start file. As before, if you need to get a hard copy of the instructions, you have this print button right here where you can save the PDF or sacrifice some trees. I know this is a computer class and we're all about saving trees, but you have that option there if you need it. Again, hit the print button and you can either save the PDF or print out a hard copy of the instructions. As part of a consulting firm's ongoing projects, we handle multiple clients and carefully track staff hours to ensure accurate billing. Each staff member is assigned specific clients and projects with their billable hours recorded daily. These hours are then consolidated weekly to generate detailed client invoices. The project management team relies heavily on accurate and timely updates to these workbooks to maintain client satisfaction and streamline our billing process. In this project, you will complete a workbook that tracks and generates client invoices based on staff hours logged across various projects. Having good invoicing details is important so a business can be paid appropriately after providing a service. You are tasked with finalizing the worksheet that contains the invoice for a team member named Jarvis. Your responsibilities include calculating Jarvis's daily billable hours, determining the total billable hours for each week, and computing the total weekly bill for his clients. The worksheet for another staff member, Stevens, has already been completed and can serve as a reference to guide you through the process. So, in other words, the Stevens spreadsheet or worksheet, as you're going to see, is already completed, and we're going to be referring to that for reference. It's going to be the Jarvis worksheet that we will be working on. Again, if you know what you're doing, you can skip straight to step 5. Otherwise, you can keep watching, and of course, you always have the pause button. All right, so if you're ready to begin, let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and open up your Excel project. And for this one, we're going to choose Excel since I recently installed some stuff on my machine here. All right, so while Excel is launching, let's scroll on down to the steps here. So step 1 is to open up the start file. And of course, step 2 is to enable editing. Let's go ahead and switch over to Excel here. And we'll click Enable Editing. Before we continue, a couple of things. Number one, if you're watching from the future, you can see how things get moved around. Remember that Microsoft 365 is typically updated on a monthly basis. And also, keep in mind, I'm using a different theme, so your copy of Excel may look a little bit different. All right, before we continue, let me give you a quick tour here. Just like with Microsoft Word, you have the quick access toolbar in the top left corner. You have your title bar here. You can see that my project is in the downloads folder. You have your search bar. You have your Microsoft account, your minimize, maximize, restore down, and close buttons. You have the ribbon, and it should be mostly familiar. There's a couple of differences here, and again, the best way to learn your way around Excel is to just be hands-on and continue practicing. You have what's called the name box here, and then you have a couple of options including inserting functions, which we'll get to later. This is the formula bar, and right here is your worksheet. In the world of Microsoft Excel, spreadsheets are called worksheets. You can see that we are in the Stevens hours worksheet. There's another worksheet here, Jarvis hours, and you can switch between them by clicking on the tabs like this. And then at the bottom, you have your status bar. Now, when it comes to spreadsheets or worksheets, you'll notice that you have columns represented by letters and numbers represented by rows. I talked a little bit about this back with Word Skill Review 4.2. These columns and rows intersect to form cells, and every cell has a cell reference or an address. So right now I'm in cell A1. You can see this green border around cell A1, which tells you that this is the active cell. So for example, if I go to click on B1, you can see how B1 is now the active cell because of the green border. Your cells can contain either text or values. So for example, here with cell A1, we see text, legal staff billable hours log. And if we go down to, let's say, B3, you can see a value here. Notice how your text is aligned to the left by default and values are aligned to the right. Values can be numbers like this. They can be formulas, or they can be functions, such as this here. A function is basically a predefined formula. So for example, this is the sum function, and you'll learn how all of this works later on in the video. All right, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the instructions here. Remember, for the first 5 steps, we are just exploring Stevens hours. If you know what you're doing and you want to jump ahead, skip to step 5. Step 3, explore the workbook. If you accidentally make changes while exploring, press Ctrl-Z to undo the change. So undo is currently grayed out right now, but you can find it up in the quick access toolbar. Click the worksheet tab labeled Stevens hours, and we are currently in Stevens hours right now. So for example, if you're in Jarvis hours, just click on Stevens hours and there you go. Part B, if necessary, use the vertical scroll bar to scroll down so you can see both weeks of billable hours, then scroll back to the top of the worksheet. So in my case here, I'm running Windows 11 in what's called a virtual machine, and so I don't have a whole lot of screen real estate, so I'm going to have to scroll. This might not be the case for you, but if necessary, you can use the scroll bars to look at the worksheet. Part C, click cell B2, the cell at the intersection of column B and row 2. This cell displays the staff member's last name, Stevens. So, as I mentioned before, you have the intersections of rows and columns. They form cells. Here is cell B2, which is basically the intersection of column B and row 2. And you can see the employee name here is Stevens. Part D, when entering a new worksheet, it is a good idea to assess the worksheet. Note that the column B and row 2 selector boxes are now highlighted. So you can see here are the selector boxes. Note that the status bar in the bottom left corner of your screen displays ready, indicating that you are in ready mode. And you can kind of see that here in the bottom left corner of your Excel window. On the Home tab in the number group, look at the number format box at the top of the group. Note that the format for this cell is general. So we're in the Home tab. Let's look in the number group, and you can see here, this is the general format. Double-click cell B2 to switch to edit mode. Note that the status bar now displays edit and the blinking cursor appears within the cell. If you needed to, you could edit the text directly in the cell. So what is the difference between ready mode and edit mode? With ready mode, I can just select the cell and type whatever I want. but you'll also notice how I can just easily overwrite things in the cell. So we want to avoid that if there's already content in the cell. If it's a blank cell like this, no problem, right? Now, if I double click, this puts me in edit mode, as you can see down here in the status bar. And here I can just go in and make the necessary changes. I'll go ahead and hit escape to return to ready mode. So I hope this makes sense as far as what the difference is between the ready and edit modes. And of course they tell you to press escape to exit edit mode and return to ready mode. Press enter twice to move to cell B4, the cell displaying the staff member's billable rate. This cell is formatted with the accounting number format. So I'm going to hit enter twice, and that moves me down to cell B4. Notice the difference between the 125 in the formula bar and in the worksheet where it is formatted as accounting. You have the $sign that is aligned to the left, and you have the amount aligned to the right with 2 decimal places by default. Look in the number format box and note that the format for this cell is accounting, which we just did. On the Home tab in the Styles group, look in the Cell Styles gallery and note that the Cell Style currency is selected. If the Cell Styles gallery is collapsed on your ribbon, click the Cell Styles button to display it. So you can see here in the Home tab Styles group, we have a drop down for cell styles. This is similar to styles in Word, except now we can format cells, not just with fonts, font color, and other effects, but you can also include shading, as you can see with some of these options. And they want you to see that this is basically a specialized version of the currency format. Don't worry about what comes after the word currency. They just wanted to point this out to you. Now we're going to click cell B8. So if you're following along, we are in part G. This is a very long step here. We're still in step 3 and we are in part G. Click cell B8, the cell displaying the number of hours for Sunday, August 1st. This cell is formatted with the comma cell style. So let's go to cell B8. You can click on cell B8. You can also use your arrow keys to get there. I used the down arrow. So here we are in cell B8. Again, notice the difference between what's in the worksheet versus the formula bar, 3.50. You'll also notice that we're still in the accounting number format here, but this is actually what's called the comma style formatting. The difference here is we don't have a $sign. Typically, when you're working with profit and loss reports, usually the first row will be in accounting number format, and you'll have a total row at the bottom, and then everything in between will usually be in comma style. You might see this with certain profit and loss reports or budgets, which are really just income versus expenses. So again, notice how this is in comma style. If we go to the Home tab, Styles group, we click on Cell Styles. There it is right here. It says comma, and there's a bunch of characters after that. Don't worry about it. So again, just as you saw, look in the number format box and note that the format for this cell is also accounting. And in the Home tab Styles group, look in the Cell Styles gallery and note that the cell style comma is highlighted for this cell. And then finally, note the style differences between cell B4, accounting number format, currency style, and cell B8, accounting number format, comma style. All right, moving along to part H. Click cell B7, the cell displaying the date 8/1/2027. This cell is formatted using the short date format. Note that the number format box displays date. So let's look at B7 here. And again, you can see the date, and you'll notice that the number format box shows date. If you click the drop down, you'll see that you actually have short date and long date to choose from. Now we're going to double click on cell B14. And you can see the daily bill here. As I mentioned before, values can consist of numbers. They can consist of formulas, as you can see here when I double click. So here is a formula where we are multiplying B12 by B4. And then later on, as you'll see, we also have functions which are predefined formulas. You'll notice that the formula begins with an equal sign, and the first part references cell B12, which represents the total billable hours for Sunday, August 1st, multiplied by B4, which is the billable rate. Now, the dollar signs in front of the B and the 4 are indicating what's called an absolute reference. So an absolute cell reference is meant for copying formulas where you don't want a cell reference to change. Now, if I had just put B12 times B4 and I went to copy this formula down the row here, that B4 would change over to C4, D4, E4. Well, obviously there's nothing there, and that would result in a formula error. Now, because I don't want the billable rate to change, that's why I have the dollar sign in front of B and 4. In other words, an absolute reference. I hope that this makes sense. You'll also notice that B12 and B4 are in different colors. B12 is blue and B4 is red. This is what's called the rangefinder, and the colors are there to help you ensure that you are referencing the correct cells, because it's real easy to make errors in Excel. And Excel will be more than happy to calculate your formula regardless if it's correct or not. So again, double click cell B14. Note that the status bar now displays edit, indicating that you are in edit mode. This cell contains a formula to calculate the daily bill for Sunday, August 1st, B12 times B4. Note that cells B12 and B4 are highlighted with colors matching the cell references in the formula. Note that the reference to cell B4 is an absolute reference. By the way, B12, as it is by default, this is what's called a relative cell reference. And then finally in part J, we're going to escape out of edit mode. There you go. The reason why B12 is called a relative cell reference, when you go to copy the formula, the cell reference changes relative to its location. So you can see how it's now C12, but because of that absolute reference with B4, notice how it stays the same. Okay, and then you can see D12 times B4, E12 times B4, and so forth. All right, so how are we doing so far? I know that this video is running a bit long, but you're basically getting a tour of how Excel works. Again, if you know what you're doing, you can skip to step 5. If you need a break, you always have the pause button. All right, let's go ahead and continue here. Double click cell B12. Note that once again, the status bar displays edit, indicating that you are in edit mode. So let's go ahead and take a look at cell B12 here, and you'll notice that the contents of cell B12 are over here, but you could also look in the formula bar. This is the sum function. Again, notice how the formula starts with an equal sign, and this is what's called the syntax of the function. All functions look like this, where you have the name of the function after the equal sign, and then you have an open and closed parentheses, and inside the parentheses you have what's called an argument. In this case, it's the range from B8 to B11. Okay, you can see that here in blue. The first cell in this group, or the range, is B8, and the last cell is B11. So it's written like this, B8 colon B11. So this indicates B8, B9, B10, and B11. The cell contains a formula using the sum function to calculate the total billable hours for Sunday, August 1st. In this case, the sum function uses a single argument, B8 to B11, to indicate the range of cells to total. Note that the cell range B8 to B11 is highlighted with a color matching the argument in the sum function formula. Note that the reference to the cell range B8 to B11 uses a relative reference, as I mentioned before. Now I'm going to press escape to exit edit mode, and just to convince you that we're using relative references, you can see here with C12, it's the sum of C8 to C11, and then you'll see D8 to D11, and so forth. So that's what's meant by a relative reference. You'll also notice that there is a potential error here, and it's only because Excel thinks that we are skipping an adjacent cell as part of the calculation. Okay, sometimes you'll see that, especially when it thinks that this is also a value as well. So you can safely ignore that. Now we're going to press tab to move to cell C12. As you saw, look in the formula bar and note that this cell contains a similar formula to the one in cell B12. So going back to cell B12, I'll hit tab to move to C12. And again, they just want to show you here how relative references work. Press tab to move through cells D12 through H12. Note that the formula in the formula bar for each cell. So again, you can see how it changes. Did you notice that the cell references in the formula in cells C12 through H12 all use relative references? And remember, when you don't want a cell reference to change, such as the billable rate, that's why we have this absolute reference here. All right, step 4, the Stevens hours worksheet contains a stacked column chart. Review the chart so that you can recreate it on the Jarvis hours worksheet. The stacked column chart to the right of the hours for the week of August 1st represents the hours worked for each client each day. So you can see here's the chart. So let me scroll a little bit to the right so you can see it. So here's the chart, and you can see it's representing the week of August 1st, 2027. The column height for each day represents the total hours worked. Each column is divided into segments representing the hours worked for each client. As you can see here, notice the legend at the bottom. The number of hours worked is represented on the y-axis. The dates are represented along the x-axis. So what does this mean? The y-axis is your vertical axis, and the x-axis here is your horizontal axis. The chart title has been changed to week of August 1st, 2027. So if you ever wanted to edit the chart title, you click on it and then you can click into it, and it's basically a text box. Very similar to what you will see in PowerPoint, and you kind of saw this with Word. And then you just click off the chart title when you are done. So that is your brief tour of Excel with the Stevens worksheet. Now we are ready to actually continue work on this project and complete it. So hopefully you have everything ready to go. If you need a break, you have that pause button. Otherwise, let's go ahead and get started. All right, here we go. And again, use the pause button if you need a break. Step 5, now you are ready to complete the worksheet for Brian Jarvis. Navigate to the Jarvis Hours worksheet by clicking the Jarvis Hours worksheet tab. So we're going to switch over to Jarvis Hours. So this is what it should look like when you are done. So at least you have an idea. Here we go. We are in Jarvis Hours. Step 6. The staff member's last name is spelled incorrectly. Navigate to cell B2 and edit the text so the last name is spelled correctly. Jarvis with an A instead of an E. Use edit mode. Your tip of the day, as before, let the instructions help you out here. They pretty much walk you through this. We're going to double click on cell B2. We're going to edit the text to read Jarvis with an A, and we're going to hit enter to accept changes. So let's go ahead and do that. Double click into cell B2, move the insertion point, replace the E with an A, and hit enter just like that. By the way, don't forget to save as you are moving through this project. If you are signed into your OneDrive, make sure you have autosave turned on. And as before, make sure that you are signed in to your LVCC OneDrive. That's Viking ID, your student ID at lvcc.edu. Step 7, the billable rate amount is missing. Navigate to cell B4 and enter the rate. Use ready mode. And again, let the instructions help you out here. All you need to do is click on cell B4, which represents the billable rate. We are going to type 180 directly into the cell. So this is how ready mode works, and we'll go ahead and hit enter. Step 8, let's modify the billable rate to use the accounting number format. Press the up arrow to return to cell B4, and in the Home tab number group, click the accounting number format button. So let's return back to cell B4, and in the Home tab number group, we actually have a button for the accounting number format. We can click the button, and there you go. You can see the $ is aligned to the left, and you have 2 decimal places. Step 9, the dates are missing from the timesheet. Enter the first date, August 1st, 2027. Again, let the instructions help you out here. Click cell B7. Type 8/1/2027. So we are going into the future here at the time of this recording, but if you are watching this from the future, you might be going into the past. And of course, go ahead and press enter. Notice how the date is currently formatted. Now in step 10, we will use autofill to complete the dates in the timesheet. Again, let the instructions help you here. This is how we can quickly copy things across, and this includes formulas and functions. Click cell B7, and right now you'll see this white cross cursor. This is what's used to select like this. You'll also notice the 4-headed arrow if you wanted to move something. But if you go to the lower right corner, you'll see this plus sign. This is what's called the fill handle, and this is how we will copy across. And as you can see here in part B, click the fill handle and drag to cell H7, release the mouse button. So it's basically clicking and dragging from the lower right corner here of cell B7. Make sure you see that plus sign. And as you are dragging, notice the tooltip appearing. See 8.5, 8.6, and then I'll let go here at 8.7. Step 11, change the date format to the 8/1/2027 format. The cell range B7 to H7 should still be selected. If not, click cell B7, press and hold shift, click cell H7, and then release the shift key. Now, I didn't really talk about this when we went through the Word skill review projects. I told you about the control key, right? You can use the control key to select non-adjacent areas. Now, if you're holding down shift instead of control, everything in between gets selected. And by the way, you could take this skill with you back to Word and you could try it out for yourself. So if you don't have the range selected, you could start with B7, hold down shift, and click on cell H7. Let me show you how. Okay, so if you don't have your range selected here, watch this. Click on B7, hold down shift, and then click H7, and notice how everything else is selected in between. In the Home tab number group, expand the number format list and click short date. So we're going to go into the drop down here in the Home tab number group. Notice how it shows date, but it's not the correct date format. We actually want short date, and there you go. Step 12. Use the quick analysis tool to calculate the total billable hours per day. Select cells B8 to H11. To do this, click cell B8, hold down the left mouse button, and drag the mouse to cell H11. Release the mouse button. The cell range B8 through H11 should now appear selected. So we start with cell B8, and again, notice the white cross cursor here. We can drag all the way over to H11, just like this. Let me show you another useful technique, and you will see this later on. I can go into the name box. Let's say I have a large worksheet and it's really hard to scroll with such limited space as you can see here with my virtual machine. You could also do this, type in B8:H11 as a range, hit enter, and there you go. You've now selected the entire range. So that's another technique you can use. The quick analysis tool button should appear near the lower right corner of the selected cell range. If the Quick Analysis tool button is not visible, move your mouse cursor over the selected cell range again without clicking. This action should make the button appear. Click the Quick Analysis tool button and then select Totals. So let's go ahead and click on our Quick Analysis button here. Notice the keyboard shortcut is Control Q. Go to Totals. Click Sum, which is the first option. So this is one method to quickly add the sum function without doing a whole lot of work here. Excel is smart enough to figure out that the sum function belongs in B12 to H12. So there's the sum function. If you want to convince yourself, there you go. In B12, it's sum from B8 to B11, and then C8 to C11, and so forth. Step 13, format the hours build section to use the comma style number format. Be sure to include the total row. Select cells B8 to H12. You could also try another method. As before, click cell B8, hold shift, and click cell H12. So check this out. We click on B8, hold down shift, and click H12, and there you go. On the Home tab number group, click the comma style button. So here's your comma style button in the Home tab number group. Boom. Step 14, enter a formula in cell B14 to calculate the daily bill for Sunday, August 1st. The formula should calculate the total billable hours for the day in cell B12 times the billable rate in cell B4. So in part H, this is what you should have when you are done. And again, let the instructions help you here. They pretty much take you all the way through. We'll start by clicking on cell B14. This represents the daily bill for Sunday. Remember that formulas need to start with an equal sign, and you pretty much walk through this. Click cell B12. This is what's called the point and click method. So we can click on cell B12 and you'll see that it's inputted automatically. Of course, you can type B12, but we know what happens when we're typing, right? Sometimes we make mistakes. Type an asterisk. Now, when it comes to arithmetic, we can use the plus sign for adding. Subtraction is minus. But when it comes to multiplying, we use the asterisk, and for dividing, we use the /. Just keep that in mind. So we are doing multiplication here, so it's B12 times, and then click cell B4, click cell B4, which represents the billable rate. Now, how do we turn this relative reference into an absolute reference? We do that by hitting the F4 key. So you can type in B4 or click B4, and then you're going to hit the F4 key on your keyboard, and notice how the dollar signs appear in front of the B and the 4. Finally, we can press enter, and there's your daily bill. Now, let's go ahead and copy our formula using the fill handle. Step 15, use autofill to copy the formula to the remaining days in the timesheet. Click cell B14 again. So we have cell B14. Go to the lower right corner, grab the fill handle, and drag all the way across to H14. Now, just to point something out here, the reason why we're using an absolute reference, let me show you what happens when you don't use an absolute reference. Now watch what happens when I try to copy the formula over. You see how you end up with all these zeros? The reason for that is because, again, when it comes to relative references, the reference changes relative to its location. There's nothing for cell C4. There's nothing for cell D4. That is why we use absolute references. Okay, so I'll go ahead and copy this back over again. And there you go. The formulas in cells B14 through H14 should look like this. Notice that when the autofill copied over the formula, it updated the relative reference B12 to reflect the new column position, but it did not change the absolute reference. So go back through, check through your formulas to convince yourself. That's basically part C. Step 16. Now you can calculate the bill total for the week by summing the daily bill amounts. Enter a formula using the sum function with the cell range B14 to H14 as the argument. So now we're just going to simply type the sum function in cell B15. So we're going to click on cell B15 and we're going to type out our sum function exactly as you see here. Equal sign sum, and then your argument is B14 to H14. So equal sign sum, open the parentheses, and you'll notice the tooltip here is showing you that your arguments have your numbers or references separated by commas. We don't want to do that. It's a lot easier to just simply enter a range. And it's B14 to H14. Notice the rangefinder there. It's showing blue. Close the parentheses and hit enter. Step 17. Use the recommended charts feature to insert a stacked column chart representing hours worked for each day for the week of August 1st. Select cells A7 to H11. Click cell A7, hold down the left mouse button and drag the mouse to cell H11. Release the mouse button. The cell range A7 through H11 should now appear selected. So why A7 to H11? The reason for this is because we want to include labels for our axes. We want the legends so that we have an idea of what is in the chart. Because if we just included the raw values, we have no idea what's going on. So we need to make sure that we have our legend, we have our labels, we have the dates, and that's the reason for that. So again, it's going to be from A7 to H11. We are skipping the total row. You can drag to select like this. You can use the other techniques we've talked about. I'll use the name box here. Okay, A7 to H11. The Quick Analysis tool button should appear near the lower right corner of the selected cell range. If the Quick Analysis tool button is not visible, move your mouse cursor over the selected cell range again without clicking. This action should make the button appear. And we're going to click on the Quick Analysis tool and click Charts, and then we're going to choose Stacked Column. So here's the Quick Analysis button. We're going to go to Charts, and we want Stacked Column. And if you're still not convinced, you can always check Stevens hours. All right, so here's our stacked column chart. In step 18, they're asking us to change the chart title. Click the chart title placeholder once to select it. Type week of 8/1/2027. So we'll click into the chart title. I'm going to triple click to replace the text and type week of 8/1/2027. Now, there's an issue with the instructions here because they're asking us to press enter, but here's what happens when you press enter. You have a new line here. We don't want that. Okay, so let me backspace. Click off of the chart title. Hopefully by the time you're watching this in the future, these instructions will have been updated. Part D. Move the chart so the top left corner of the chart is in cell J6. To move the chart, click once in the white area inside the chart. Left click on the chart and drag to cell J6, and then deselect the chart by clicking outside the chart. So we're going to pick up the chart, as you can see with the four-headed arrow here, and we're going to drag it so that the top left corner is in cell J6. So this is what you should have. I've selected cell J6 as the active cell so you can see where your chart needs to be. Step 19, preview how the worksheet will look when printed. Click cell A1 to deselect the chart. Now, you could also use our good old friend Control Home, and that's going to take you to cell A1. And if you want to go to the end of your worksheet, or at least the last cell that has content, you would use Control N. But that's a quick way to get to A1. Click the File tab to open Backstage View. There's that terminology again. Let's go into Backstage View here by going to the File tab. Click print to display the print preview. There's your print preview. Later on, you're going to learn some techniques on how to get your worksheet to fit on a page. But for now, we just want to see what our worksheet is going to look like. Click the left arrow to close Backstage View. Now, there is one other term that you're going to hear about, and that is workbook. An Excel workbook is basically your Excel file. So a worksheet is an individual spreadsheet. You can see that we have 2 worksheets here in our Excel workbook. I hope that this makes sense. At this point, we're now ready to submit this project for grading, and hopefully you've made it all the way to the end here. I know that this was a long video. You always have that pause button if you need a break. Let's go ahead and get our moment of truth here. Let's go ahead and get our moment of truth here. Save and close the workbook, upload and save your project file, and submit the project for grading. So let's go ahead and save. We'll close completely out of Excel. We'll go back to the top here. And just to show you how you can drag your project into step 2, I'm going to bring up my downloads folder and we'll drag it into the box for step 2, and we'll go ahead and grade the project. And there you go, 100%. So I hope that this video has helped you out. I know it was a long one here. Good luck, and be sure to practice. You have your training sim for chapter 1 to work on. And with that, take care of yourselves out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.